and welcome to another episode of Dave Trippin's Couch Therapy. And this is Wednesday, so that means I'm doing a Q&A session where on Mondays I'm usually doing some sort of cultural discussion. If you want to get your questions answered about life, love, the moon, and the stars, or maybe even something about Japan, just write me down below here. Get a hold of me through any of that social media that I flash up, and I'll try and get to your questions. If not, through email. I'm always trying to make these movies every Wednesday to answer your questions. Today, though, was from Matthew, and the topic was, I think it's a really interesting thing because we go through a lot of changes when we come to a foreign country, especially in our personality, much as it may have already developed. A lot of people who are coming over are doing so fresh out of university, and so there's still, well, we're always developing our personalities, but there's a lot that you're going through and changing during that time. And one of the big things is the question of introvertedness versus extroverted people. Introverted, if you want to go deep down and dig into the definition, it can mean that people, as much as they enjoy being social, get their energy by being away from people. But you can interchangeably, if you look up the synonyms, shy or reticent, or someone who is just a little more cautious with their behavior is included in that as well. So before all the introvert Nazis go off on me for saying, no, that's not exactly what it means, I'm kind of discussing it in a holistic, like, as it would refer to these other synonyms for shyness and things like that as well. So the email from Matthew reads, "Hello Dave, I'm a person who used to be introverted, but I've changed that and would easily consider myself an extrovert these days and sometimes the life of the party." Congratulations, Matt. It's good to be the life of the party. The change was a huge challenge, but much needed. Sometimes it is. But I still can't get over how shy I am when I present. So I'm assuming in any sort of business setting, up in front of people, where maybe it's something slightly more formal, I get extremely nervous, especially since in college my major is IT, so I'm imagining information technology there. It's very rare that I have to give a presentation, but when I present, I rush through my content. Will this deeply affect getting an ALT position in Japan? It might initially be something that you'd struggle with. For example, if you're going to lead classes and you rush through all your content, you're going to have a number of different problems. You're not giving the people who are listening to you time to absorb what it is that you're saying. If you speak too quickly as well, depending on the level of your class, that's going to make things probably very difficult for them to comprehend. There's a whole bunch of different issues that arise from being too shy or introverted or whatever you want to call it, withdrawn. But I would say as well that this is sort of the best venue for it. Overcoming things, in my opinion, is usually that there is an illusion of how bad that experience actually is when compared to the reality of doing it. And so by practicing this thing, if it's not like skydiving or something like that, you can quickly, very quickly, it feels at least initially like it's a long time, but very quickly you can overcome whatever that problem is. For example, I would say the same thing holds true of the language. When you feel like you're struggling so much to begin with, if you push through those barriers of, oh, I feel so stupid when I'm speaking, and you kind of embrace your beginner's mind and just allow every mistake to flow, not care, to continue to practice, you start to develop very quickly. Every situation, our perspective is usually altered at the beginning for how strongly the negative impact has an impact on us when we compare it to how long it's actually taking. And so you'll perceive it, at least initially, like you were taking forever to overcome this thing, but then a month or two goes by and suddenly you're the king of the class. Suddenly you're up in front, you're confident, you're speaking at a good pace, you're not rushing anything, you're leaving time, maybe even for jokes. Like, it's funny how like a pause can be humorous when timed right. Now, your question specifically here, Matt, was about getting the position. So I'm talking about things so far in the context of practice, and practice makes perfect, and overcoming it slowly, and how once you have the position, if you roll with it and you kind of accept those defeats as necessary, that you'll overcome them. Initially, what I would suggest doing is, it's the same thing, but it's practice. Say, for example, I know that a number of these interviews that you have, be it for a dispatch company, be it for Jet, doesn't matter. A lot of them will have you do a faux lesson. And if you've got time before that lesson, I would suggest rehearsing it. That's a no-brainer. When I was initially coming over with no experience, I probably worried more than I did or more than I needed to for the interview. And I had my presentation lesson that I was going to give at, whatever the interview was that I was going to. And I just mercilessly practiced that over and over and over again until I could basically do it in my sleep. And so you overcome that issue, at least in this phase of the process, in your practice beforehand. So if you're a person who rushes a little bit, practice not to rush. Get all these kinks hammered out before you come over. And then if your greater concern is that later on, once you're here, will you retain that same problem and will it never go away? I would say that that would be highly, highly unlikely. Given a little bit of time, I think it's totally overcomable, and I think it's usually as well less time than you're perceiving it to be. Kind of like, well, I'm probably a bad example for the language because I could be so much better with the language that I am, but I keep coming back to that example of the language. When you're studying and you're speaking with people initially, it feels like there's so much resistance, but then you suddenly turn around and you're able to carry a bit of a conversation with everybody and you're like, oh, where did the time go? If you continue, if you stick with it. I can't resist to quote my favorite inspirational phrase. It's Lao Tzu, the great Chinese philosopher. He's a good guy. He says, our glory is not in never falling, but rising each time we do. And that is, it's words to live by. In another phrase, it's try again. In another phrase, it's whatever. But if you continue along and you don't accept these mistakes as your ultimate defeat, then you'll adapt to be the person that you need to be. I should say as well, when I read your email and I'm looking at it, you'd said that you were introverted and it was a necessary change to become an extroverted person by whatever your exact definition of being extroverted or introverted is. But I would really say that there is no specific personality in the end that works. There's no setting hard, fast rules in life only takes you so far when there's such a variety of experiences that we encounter. And so finding your wavelength is really, really cool. Like, to tell a little bit of an anecdote, there's this guy who's this wonder teacher that I work with now. And it's so interesting for me to see his style is so, he's a disciplinarian. He's a guy who holds like the class to a really high standard, doesn't give the kids much of an inch in terms of he's following his lesson plan. He's got like what he wants to succeed in, and if you deviate from that, he's got like, the way that he actually makes it fun is he's almost turned like the disciplinary action that he takes into sort of games for the children, where if they're not listening well, he makes them stand up, and if they continue to talk or distract from the class, he makes them stand on a chair. But I've noticed that the kids find it almost entertaining, like when they're up on the chair and they're like looking around the class. So that he's managed to make a disciplinary style with the right manner behind it, because he's not a cruel person, but like, you're gonna follow this. I mean, if you were to eventually step too far out of line, he'll come down hard on you, but you'll make it work for your kind of style. It's rare. I thought myself being, for all intents and purposes, a pretty laid-back guy. I don't take like strong disciplinary action like that in a class. I mean, usually my method is that I would direct all attention away from that person, where most of why the kid is having any sort of fun, if they're causing trouble, is because they're drawing attention to themselves. And if you don't give them the satisfaction of that attention, then they're like, oh, this is no fun. Like, I mean, the show didn't even get started and nobody's watching me, so I guess I'll just jump in. Or I go with maybe that like kind of Genki approach to it, where you try and make the lesson so engaging that if somebody is sitting on the outside of that experience, they want to take part in it because they want to have fun. They're like, oh man, everybody else is having so much fun in this class. What's the secret? Like, why do they get to have the fun and I don't? But more and more, that's the point. Without, this isn't specifically about school or classroom discipline. It's about that whether you're an introvert, whether you're an extrovert, that you'll find a crossroads of your behavior that will work well for you. And if you accept that eventually this crossroads will happen, if you stay optimistic, if you stay determined, it'll arrive very, very quickly. And the added thing, that the cherry on top of all of this, is that it's given your stamp, your seal, your personality becomes injected into the classroom. That's why I get a little bit cautious about how much advice I give about the sort of like way that somebody should teach, because some of the best teachers that I've ever seen teach in ways that I never would have expected before. There's more kind of an approach, a general openness to the way that you should teach, and not be discouraged by whatever it is that scares you. And with the right spirit, with the right mentality behind whatever you're doing, the right general mentality, you'll find your way to something very, very successful. I answered very early on how to get rid of this problem in terms of the interview, though, which is practice. This should be simple. If you find that you're a person who's nervous, then practice the nervousness out of you, especially when you consider that when you're going into this interview to begin with, that there's really not that many people watching it. There's probably like the interviewer, and then they might record you because they're going to send that recording to the school or whatever board of education is going to hire you. So it's not even like, I mean, you were talking about, Matt, that you were giving these presentations at your work. That was probably in front of a number of people, where at least initially here, you're not going to have to do anything like that. I'd be curious to know, what are other people's methods? Like, if they're nervous before an interview, what do you do when you have that happen? Do you have like a particular ritual or something that you like to do to stop the nerves? I talk about practice, but maybe there's like a mental exercise. People can comment down below and let us know what's your method for de-stressing. What do you think as well? I'm curious, what do you think is better in the classroom? I've said holistically, I think that you could approach it from any angle, but do you guys watching, do you think it would be better to be extroverted? Do you think that an introvert could quietly lead the class better? What do you think about that as well? I think I'll actually put up in the top here, do you find yourself to be more of an introvert or more of an extrovert? And then we can have a discussion down below here. But I'll put that question up top, because I think naturally people tend towards a more introverted state. But that's my perception, right? I'll be really curious to see what happens when we put the question up there in the corner. So yeah, let's get some discussion going about that. So please do smash that like button. 200 likes. Can this video make it to 200 likes? That would be pretty amazing. That's like kind of my gold standard right now. I don't have a lot of those. Please do subscribe if you enjoyed videos like this. As I mentioned before, get a hold of me through social media if you want your questions answered on Wednesday. I still haven't decided. I was thinking that it's Christmas this weekend, so maybe I forego releasing the video this weekend, because you should spend it with your families. Don't be watching videos of me on YouTube. I should be doing the same, spending it with people I care about as well. Although I will be taking a lot of recording from that and turning it into a cool, nicely edited video, which I think people really enjoy, although kind of in the post-afterglow of Christmas itself. Thank you so much for watching this. I really appreciate it. There's going to be some playlists afterwards for couch therapy, probably for travel, and I will catch you guys in the next video. Ciao for now. Peace. Merry Christmas.